it's something that people throw away, but they just divert it into a different compartment or a different bin so that it can be reused. So we'll talk about that. Just a little bit about myself. Bill said that I was has been there 19 years, and I came to Curry Transfer and Recycling with absolutely no knowledge about recycling, other than my husband and I recycled pretty well in Eugene. We put our bin out, we put our trash can out, and it disappeared, and that's about as much as we thought about it. So when I came to Curry Transfer and Recycling, I just really had no clue about the complexities and what happened under the surface. And so I think I'm definitely not an expert. I know the Curry County recycling program pretty well. I think there's probably very few people in the county that really understand the programs that we have, and I've been lucky enough to be kind of in the forefront of that. When I came, I knew nothing, so I didn't really have anybody to teach me, so I just kind of had to dig in and figure it out and learn the business. I've attended trade shows, read books, watched videos, and just tried to really educate myself on what's happening. Part of what really drove me is that from a business point of view at Curry Transfer, you take a different perspective than from an environmental view. Sometimes those are at odds with each other, and it seemed like one side was saying one thing, the other side was saying another thing, and I felt kind of caught in the middle because I ended up being involuntarily, I became the recycling coordinator, so I felt like I had a responsibility to know exactly what was going on. And I just kind of dug into it to find out what the truth is. And most people really don't know what the truth is about recycling. I think it's a very confusing program, and there's lots of reasons why, and we'll dig into that a little bit tonight. Like I said, I'm by no means an expert, and the global issues involving recycling and waste are well beyond me. So I think during this presentation, you might feel, I don't know how emotionally attached you are to recycling and waste, but you may feel some frustration, maybe some helplessness while I'm going through this presentation, but I promise you at the end, I will not leave you without some hope and some solutions that you can do in your own personal lives. So I promise you that at the end, we'll probably end up on a very positive note. Bill has mentioned that we are an example in the Oregon State as having responsible recycling programs. That has only happened recently, and I'll shed some light on that. We were actually always kind of running behind. Everybody thought we were running behind the goals that we needed to meet, and we were always being pushed to do more recycling and get more products in. And I think as we go through this presentation, you'll see that really the way we were recycling was the right way to do it. And now we've been kind of a little bit vindicated because of the current recycling climate. So with that, I think I'm ready to start my presentation. So I'm going to see if I can do this. I'm not very, this is not one of my strong points here. So just a moment. And I need to share this, right?
That's right.
Okay. So let's share the screen.
All right.
Yeah, we could.
Okay, and let me get the slideshow. Okay.
Do you want to put the slide?
On how I wanted to do this this presentation because when I have talked about it, it's been more in the context. Oh, I have to share it, right? So I apply it. So I'm sorry.
It's working now. Perfect.
Okay, great. So I kind of struggled on how I wanted to approach this because usually when I give a presentation on recycling, it's more to the county or the cities about our particular program, but in the context of global climate change and all the environment and what we can do of recycling, I've decided to kind of take you through a little bit of a history of how we got here and what has really transpired over the last, I would say 150 years to get us to this point, because it really has been an evolution. And like I said, recycling is a waste. It is a product that people dispose of, but we just recover it so that we can use it and repurpose and make other new products, waste as well. So we'll go through just kind of a little bit of history here, and then we'll get into, okay, what do we do now? And I'm good with you guys asking questions. If you want to unmute yourself and ask a question during that, I'm good with that. So I thought I was going to be a little bit more pressed for time, and I'm going to be here the whole time. So I am not being able to advance it though here. Just a moment.
Check in the lower left corner. It should bring up.
There it goes. Got it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Was that yeah, that was my first screen. Okay, so pre-war, let's just talk about pre-World War II. And I'm not sure how old everybody is on this. If you're, I'm 64, so I still, I was not around in pre-World War II, but I was influenced by my parents and my grandparents who came through the Depression, came through tough times, came through the war rations. Really, you didn't have to teach recycling at that point. I mean, that was just part of the fabric of society. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk about dumps and transfer sites and modern landfills, because there's a lot of confusion about where trash goes and how it's handled. We're going to talk a little bit about Earth Day, which I think is the seeds of recycling programs. We'll talk about China. China is a big player in this whole, in the whole complexity of recycling and trash. What about mandated programs? How did the government get involved in this? What is China doing now? They've actually banned a lot of recycling, which we were just talking about before we started this. Nobody's recycling. Well, there's a reason why the recycling is limited, and it's really largely China. And then going forward, what are we going to do about it now that China has banned most of our recycling materials? So these are the kind of the points that I'm going to touch on tonight. So in pre-war World War II, like I said, that you didn't have to teach recycling. It really was never, recycling was not an issue. Families handled their own waste. They buried their waste on their property. Most of them had pits, or actually, you know, your outhouses served as trash depots. Basically, you used everything. You reused, you repaired, you repurposed, you just kept using an item over and over and over until it could no longer be. And then there was not much of it left when you actually did wear it out. You know, most of us probably grew up with hand-me-downs, and when those hand-me-downs got worn out, they were torn up for rags, and then those rags were collected and made paper. They made paper out of it. So there was not a lot of waste. There were, you know, for the larger metropolitan areas, there were a lot of open dumps that were kind of continually burning. Even in the Bible times, if you know of the Valley of Gehenna, or that was a big pit outside of Jerusalem where all of the waste, dead bodies, dead animals, that's where it was constantly burning. Those were open burning dumps, and those continued all the way up until the 19th century. In New York, when New York was started building their high rises, they had incinerators in their basement to the chute, and it went down to the basement to be incinerated. So resources were limited and valued. So when you bought things, when you bought furniture, you didn't get rid of that furniture when you were tired of it. You handed it down to your children, you handed it down to your grandchildren. So waste was just not a huge factor before World War II. We repaired everything, and so it was just a given. And even for the affluent, when wartime came, there were not a lot of even the rich had to give over some of their metals and their rags. They had to be rationed, so they were even impacted by the shortages of resources. Also, let's see. No, I guess I'm going to go back. Okay, so what about post-World War II? So we had economic growth. There were a lot of factors that kind of converged that caused the abundance of materials that we have, and created the recycling programs and the trash programs. And they all kind of came together after World War II. We had economic growth. We had societies embracing disposability. This disposability really didn't start happening until the early 20th century, 1910, 1920. We started seeing some innovations, and there was a little bit more people kind of embracing the idea of possibly, more disposable things. I think a lot of it is because of disease, not reusing rags, and they used to use rags and stuff for Band-Aids, and then they used to wash them. So I think the idea of more sanitary practices were kind of driving the disposability at that time. Marketing, what do you want to say about that? Marketing through television, permeation of plastics. We started having ubiquitous curbside waste collections, and landfills started to be modernized. China enters the picture. So there was just a lot of things that kind of came together to create what we have now as a very disposable society, and we're a very consumer society. And I think you guys can all see probably, just from history, the huge difference between pre-world. I'm going to be kind of coming at it from different angles. So I wanted to explain to you the difference between dumps, transfer sites, landfills, incinerators. These were kind of the ways that our waste has been disposed of after World War II. Actually, dumps kind of started before World War II, but transfer sites, big landfills, and incinerators were really more in starting in the kind of the mid 1900s. Our first modern landfill was in the United States, was in Fresno in 1937. and they really kind of pioneered the standards for all modern landfills. So how many of you remember open dumps?
What?
Oh, yeah.
There, I don't know, I can't see you, so you might be raising your hand or not, but when I was a kid, an open dumps, yeah. We'd all climb in the car because we wanted to go with them, and so that we could go and see what we could, collect at the dumps. That was just kind of a Saturday outing for our family. We just everybody, and you'd go out there, and everybody's families were out there, and throwing and discarding, but seeing what treasure you might be able to find. These dumps, and this is kind of what people think dumps look like today. But these were loosely dangerous. There was no environmental protections. In 1976, Congress banned all open dumps and began to regulate and track waste. So right now, there are no open dumps like this in the United States, unless there might be in somebody's backyard. I don't know. We've seen reports in Curry County of people having open, using their backyards as dumps for many years. So. But these are no longer allowed in the United States and most of the Western world. This is a transfer site, and this is not our transfer site, but it's just I just found a picture of a transfer site which kind of looks similar. Transfer sites that's what we have here in Curry County. And we don't have a dump in Curry County. We don't have a landfill in Curry County. We don't have a land. We have most rural areas have transfer sites. And basically what we do is we collect the garbage from all Curry County. Curry Transfer collects it from all of the county. We service all of the county. We bring it to our transfer sites, or people take it to the transfer sites. The curbside collection, the commercial collection, and the public transfer sites, all trash is brought to the transfer sites. We have 4 transfer sites in Curry County, one in Port Orford, one at Nisika Beach, one 9 miles north of Brookings, and we have our Brookings yard on Carpenterville Road. All of the trash gets staged at these transfer sites. They get put into semi-trailers and 18-wheelers, and we take 3 to 4 trucks of garbage a day over to White City, which is east of Medford. So this is a way most rural counties handle their waste. They're captured, they're staged, and then they move them over to an approved landfill. We do, like I said, about 3 to 4 truckloads a day, which our trucks are 24 tons. So we're moving 75 to 100 tons a day, and we are very regulated by the our plans are enforced by DEQ. We cannot leave trash on our floors for more than 36 hours. So we have to keep samples. We do all kinds of testing to make sure that we are protecting the soils, the air, all of the quality that we need to. So they're very regulated. So this is a modern landfill. And when you go to, this is Dry Creek. This is the landfill that we use, that we take over by White City. They adhere to very, very strict EPA regulations. They monitor the air quality and carbon emissions. They have state-of-the-art, very thick liners that are they're divided into tons a cell will hold, but basically the landfill may be permitted to have maybe a couple hundred cells. And when they fill one cell up, or they line the cell, when they fill it up, they cover it. And every day a layer of dirt is put onto whatever trash is brought in by these 18-wheelers. They cover it with dirt, and then the next day they'll put another layer of trash and then a layer of dirt, and that's just to keep the birds and the critters and keep it from flying, the trash from flying, everything. And then when these cells are filled up, they put these liners on it. They're very state-of-the-art liners to protect land and water. They capture the methane at Dry Creek. They capture the methane and they power 3,000 homes with that methane. And they capture the leachate and neutralize the leachate. So they're very, very, very high-tech operations. And I have visited our Dry Creek and toured it, and even when you go there, you kind of expect it to be smelly and dirty. Not anything like that. Nothing like an old-fashioned dump. It's very clean. There's hardly any smell. There's very little carbon emissions. So it's just very state-of-the-art. And it's kind of it's very interesting, I think, to kind of visit a landfill. And if you ever have a chance, they do offer tours over there. I think you would be impressed. I'm going to break. I'm going to have a myth buster here. People think that we are running out of landfill space, and we talk about it, and that is just not so. And this is even coming from the Department of Quality Assurance, that we have plenty of space for landfills, and when they are managed like the state-of-the-art modern landfills, this landfill will last probably for another 150 years. They have a lifespan. They're only permitted for so long. And when they're filled up, they are capped. They are, well, I'm going to show you the next slide, because you can see this is a landfill. All of this is a landfill. So you can see it's kind of building up. So it's going to become part of the mountains. And when you go to Dry Creek, it's actually part of the landscape of the mountains. So they'll cover this all up. They'll put grass on it. Sometimes they're flat. They're not, but once they get done, they put grass over it. They make it a park. They make it a golf course. They say that this has come from a couple different sources. They say that a 35 square mile pit, if you were to have one, if you were to visualize that, 100 feet deep, will house all of America's garbage for the next 1,000 years. So, I mean, I don't know what Curry County, how many square miles Curry County is, but that can't be very much, very different than just our little area here. So we are not running out of landfill space, and I think I think that's part of when we're talking to we just really aren't running out of landfill space. Not to say that landfills are the best place to put trash or to do it, but it's just, that's not one of the issues. So modern landfills, we have 24 in Oregon. They are, we don't have any on the coast because we're too close to the ocean, and there's too many concerns about that. So most of our landfills are along the I-5 corridor or in the Eastern Oregon. So those 24 landfills hold all of Oregon's garbage. And I think I haven't looked at the figures, but the last time I looked at the figures, which is a couple years ago for Oregon, I think Oregon does about 250,000 tons of garbage a year that goes into the landfills. They're very high tech. They are extremely regulated. So the stormwater drainage, they have stormwater drainage systems, they have leachate collection systems, they have methane collection systems, they cover and cap, and they monitor. So we used to have a landfill in Curry County, and it was at the Port Orford transfer site where our Port Orford transfer site is now. That actually used to be a landfill, and Curry Transfer actually pay a fee to the county to have that monitored. And you have to have a landfill, once it's closed, monitored for 30 years. So you're still monitoring the methane, the leachate, the soil. You're still managing that for 30 years. And actually, we've been paying into this monitoring fund for over 30 years just to make sure, just because people are very nervous about the whole thing. So we just make sure that we continue to fund the cost to do the soil samples and make sure everything is that we're doing the right thing there. Any questions about landfills right as I'm at this point?
Candie, I've been monitoring the chat. No one's brought up, and no one's had any questions
Okay.
in the chat. If anybody does, you can
Oh.
always put it in the chat and I can pass it along too.
Sounds good. The other thing that we used to, and I don't have this in my slide, but the other thing that we used to have in Curry County is an incinerator in 1980. But we basically burned the trash. Coos County just closed their incinerator maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. So they actually burned the trash for several years. There's really, incineration is actually a viable tool, tool to deal with garbage, but most American incinerators, Europe, really, Sweden, Switzerland, all of them, they have incinerators in their cities. They're not even outside the cities. They're pieces of artwork, basically, and they're right in the middle of their cities. And they have success with incinerators. If you're ever interested in it, go on YouTube and kind of see what the issues are about it. But Europe does embrace incinerators. America, we're not there. Okay, so going back to post World War II, we start becoming a very consumer society. Plastics, marketing, people are tired of the war and rations and having to you know, kind of live in kind of an impoverished way, so or in a frugal way, I should say. So we start generating waste. It starts becoming too much, and the litter problem becomes a problem. So welcome to, and I should say happy Earth Day, everybody. Tomorrow is Earth Day, the official Earth Day. It started in 1970. And it started not as a recycling or an environmental day. It really kind of started as a Keep America Beautiful campaign. It was really a and I don't know if anybody remembers the campaign that they had a Native American, you know, was their spokesperson. And from what I understand, he wasn't even Native American. He was Italian, but dressed up like a Native American. And that was he had the tear in the eye when he looked at the litter all over the place. And so that was kind of the beginning of Earth Day. But it ended up being the seeds of the municipal recycle programs, because it was just like people were just, what are we going to do with all this waste and all of the consumption and all of the litter? People didn't seem to really care about the environment that much, or people would just throw things out their car and, onto the streets and onto the beaches. We have a lot of litter. It seems like we have a lot of litter now, but I think back in the 70s, I can remember parks just littered. You'd have trash cans, but people would just leave their stuff, right where they, instead of throwing it in the garbage, they just leave it where on the tables and everything. So I think that was in a response to just so much overconsumption. So now, how does China fit into this whole thing? So in 1980 to 2013, China's growing. Their economy is just booming. But they have no, if they had natural resources, I think they do have some natural resources. They have no infrastructure to get to those natural resources. And no, they didn't have the innovation there, and so they needed raw materials, and so they imported all raw materials to China. And so in order to get these raw materials, to manufacture their goods, they wanted all of the plastic, paper, all of the recyclables that we could give them were all going over to China. When you're into the recycle business, you want to think that, okay, let's sell domestically, and Oregon has been really good about making sure that we take care of all of our domestic markets. But when China is just buying up all, and wanting everything that they can, and they're paying high dollar for our recycling, that money talks. So all of our recycling material was going over to China. China didn't care what it looked like. It didn't care if it was clean, dirty, if it was contaminated, they had 30% contamination. They were going to go through our trash basically and pick out the recycling material that what they could use. And China has 1 billion people. I mean, so at the time, I think they have 1.3 billion now. So they had cheap labor, and you'll see, if you probably have seen documentaries or pictures of these places where the recycled material goes or trash goes, and you have children and old, elderly people, all ages are out there picking through our recycling materials, and some of the more hazardous things like electronic waste. They were picking through that. So all of it was going over there without any regard to whether the material was good, solid, usable, reusable material or not. They exported. It was not just United States. I mean, this was the UK, Australia, any Europe, any countries were sending their material over to China. And what they did is that China would send all their goods and their product over to the other countries, and then so they'd send these ships over full, and in order to not send those ships back empty, we filled them up with recycled materials, and they went right back. So it was kind of a win-win situation for everyone. I can tell you that when I started 19 years ago, we were paid top dollar for our material, and it wasn't. I think recycling has never, since I've been there, ever paid for itself, but we didn't lose money either. So we kind of broke even. That hasn't happened for the last 5 years. It's pretty much been a loss for us. But at that time, we could get $150 or $200 a ton for cardboard, and maybe $100 for mixed materials. Now we're paying for those materials. We're not getting money. We're actually paying for most of our materials. But back in 1980 to 2013, just collect whatever you can. Didn't matter if it was good or bad, and send it over to China and let China kind of deal with the contamination. So they accepted large volumes of contamination, and that really fostered decades of unsustainable practices globally. And quite frankly, we're paying for that now. So China had no infrastructure to deal with the world's trash, and it was low quality plastics and mixed paper. While in the US and UK and Australia, we were encouraging everybody to recycle as much as you can. Any plastics, any paper, no matter what the quality is, just divert it and we'll make sure that it gets recyclable. So America felt like we were recycling like crazy, when we were actually just collecting really not very quality material and just passing that off to China. So guess what? In China, in 1913, China has developed and prospered and woke up and said, you know what? We have no infrastructure to deal with the world's trash. We don't want the world's trash anymore. We don't want your low quality plastics, your mixed paper. We don't want your trash. One of the main contaminants that was sent over in those ships was dirty diapers. People would put dirty diapers in their and sharps needles, and all kinds of trash would get through, not just low quality recycled material, but literally just trash would get over there. And they just said, we're not taking the world's trash anymore. Well, in 2013, they had what they call a green fence policy. And it was a call to clean up our exported material, not ban, but just clean it up. So they required they looked at it, and if it had a certain amount of contamination in it, they just sent those materials back. So that's why some of you have experienced recently, clean bins anymore. Well, that's because China's not taking our garbage. But in 2018, it really didn't help. They were still getting they might have not been getting so much trash, but they were still getting low quality recycling material. So in 2018, they just banned recycling altogether, basically. So where is all this product going to go now? Well, it started going to other Asian countries like Malaysia, Taiwan, and some of these other places, which are instead of cleaning up our act, we just started sending it to different places. But now those places are also saying, we don't want to deal with the trash either. They have quality control or the infrastructure to do anything with those products. So they're just big garbage dumps anymore. So I think that the requirement for China now to get, they do take some recycling materials, but it has to be I think it's less than 0.25 contamination. When we were sending 30 to 50% contaminated material, to get down to 0.25 contamination, we just, America just doesn't have the technology to clean it up that good right now. Without retooling all of their facilities to do that. So let's go back and talk a little bit about just recycling in Oregon. So in Oregon, we started, we Oregon-related curbside recycling. All jurisdictions with more than 4,000, having a population of greater than 4,000 had to offer curbside recycling. So for us in Curry County, that was the city of Brookings, has a population of more than 4,000. And any urban growth areas attached to that city. So we were required by law to offer a curbside recycling in Brookings and the urban growth area, which is Harbor basically, and a little bit around north of Brookings. So we started that, but we also didn't just limit it to Brookings. We also offered it to Gold Beach, city of Gold Beach and urban growth area, and city of Port Orford in the urban growth area. So we have been recycling in all of the cities and urban growth areas for at least since 1990. We've also have the transfer sites. We also transfer sites, so we've everybody in Curry County has the opportunity. The legislation in 1990 is enforced by DEQ, so we do all of our reporting to DEQ on a regular basis. Cities were required to establish a recycle plan and a recovery goal, and at that time, when you kind of you had to kind of estimate what you were going to be able to collect, and Curry County landed on 30%. They were going to try to recover 30% of material from the waste and divert it so that it could be recycled rather than sent to the landfill. Our tracking, well, let me get to Curry County in a minute. We have tracking and reporting requirements, so we track all of our recycling that comes in and goes out, annual reports that we get to DQ every year. And that's not just us, but that's anybody that's involved in recycling, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We started out primarily all over Oregon. We use the little bins, the 18-gallon bins that look like laundry baskets that you guys use for your glass right now. So that was primarily the way it was collected. Trucks came in. It was mostly dual stream or multi-stream, where trucks came, and I don't know if you guys remember this, but the trucks had 4 or 5 compartments. So these bins were, everything was pretty well sorted at the curb. So you put your cardboard in one department, you put your plastics in another compartment, your paper in another compartment, your tin cans in another compartment, your glass. So it was all kind of sorted at the curb, which makes your material much more valuable. But then we went to roll carts, from bins to roll carts to single stream, mainly to make it easier for people to recycle, because people didn't want to have to sort all of their things. They didn't want to have to divide everything in their little carts, in their little bins, and take off the labels and everything. So Oregon wanted to make it easier. So the roll carts kind of came in the metropolitan area. I think they started doing roll carts in the early 2000s. We didn't in Curry County do the start roll cart recycling until a couple of years ago, but we resisted, and I'll talk about that. In Oregon, there are probably about 10 or so material recovery facilities, and they call these MRFs. So now that everything is single stream, we collect glass and everything else. Everything else goes to these sorting facilities, and that's where they get sorted. Instead of at the curb, they're getting sorted at these facilities. And I'll show you some pictures of that in a minute. So materials are sold, we do take care of our domestic markets, but our domestic markets are flooded. And there's some resistance to using recycled material rather than virgin materials in our domestic markets. So most everything is sold to the foreign markets. They also established the bottle bill. And I will get to that when we get to the bottle bill. And I think Oregon's bottle bill, which is the collection of plastic bottles and aluminum soda cans and things like that, the things that we redeem at the grocery stores. I think Oregon bottle bill is probably the best. I'm originally from California, and I can kind of explain to you the difference between Oregon's bottle bill and some of the other states' bottle bill. And then we have, they've started establishing stewardship programs or policies. It started out, I think e-waste was the first, and then paint care. But this, you're going to start hearing a lot more about stewardship policies. And stewardship policies are basically producer responsibility. It's making the producers of electronics, the producers of paint, basically responsible for the end life of a product. So every time that you buy a TV or a computer or a 5-gallon can of paint, you may be paying 20 cents or 50 cents on the, a portion of every dollar will be spent to make sure that they're that these are actually disposed of in a proper way. And Oregon is one of the first states to actually, right now there's legislation for producer responsibility programs for almost everything, for packaging, for almost all materials. They're going to really push the producers to be responsible for recyclable packaging. It's really going to be actually very innovative and very, I think, a game changer. But if this legislation gets passed, then Oregon will be the first state in the union to actually have a producer responsibility bill. So, and that's one of those things where, there's a little bit of hope there, coming through, a little light at the end of the tunnel. So what about in Curry County? What are we doing, and why are they looking at our program now? So I talked about the curbside recycling. We collected, sorted, marketable. We always sorted and collected marketable materials: corrugated cardboard, plastic jugs 1 and 2, bottles, glass jars, bottles, newsprint, paper, tin, aluminum. Those are your materials that actually have some recyclable value. And we have, especially because a lot of people here are from California, people move in and they say, you guys need to take more things. California recycles everything. You guys recycle nothing. Well, we would try to thing that has a market. We don't collect trash and send it over to, we don't send it to Portland and then have them sell it to China. We always knew that the material that we collected had good, strong markets, and we didn't collect anything that didn't have a strong market, or we knew that was never going to get recycled in the first place. So we stuck to our guns, and there was a good reason why we had to stick to our guns. We are probably the furthest, except for maybe northeastern Oregon, we are the furthest county from the processing plants. Most of our for a long time, most of our material had to go up to Portland. So we were taking our recycling material all up to Portland. Well, we're not on a main lane where trucks come. So we had to actually truck that ourselves. So it's very, very expensive for us to take our recycling material to Portland. So we didn't want to take our trash. We knew it was trash. And we didn't want to take our trash to Portland. So we stuck to our guns that we were only going to take anything that had a really strong market to it. And we were still kind of so that because it's more valuable if you keep your glass, your plastic and your newsprint corrugated cardboard separate. So we were still separating that material so that we could recover some of the cost of transporting that. And it costs us basically $1,400 every time to take a load to, that's just our transportation costs to take it to Portland. Now, look at Portland for just to see, so you can see the difference. If you're in Portland and you're collecting, or even in Eugene or any place that has a lane that you have truckers that are coming and going and doing backhauls, if you're a hauler, a trash hauler, and you actually in one of our sister districts is actually located right next to a sorting plant, and that sorting plant is going to pay you for that material, you're going to try to get as much of the material you can to the sorting plant rather than pay to have it taken to a landfill. So your incentives are different. It was very expensive for us to take our material to Portland, where if you're in Portland, you actually benefit by taking your low quality stuff to a sorting facility that's going to pay you for it. So there's just all kinds of different incentives there that really encouraged bad recycling practices, I think. So we have always had a history of a very clean product. Most of Oregon probably had 15, 20, 30, even 40% contamination in their containers. We have always had 1.5% or less contamination. And so as a company and a representative of the company, I'm really proud that we were able to I think do our part to make sure that our material was a good product. And our product was so good that the plants that we sent them to really wanted our product. And ours was so good that for the most part, they didn't even have to break our bales apart to sort them, because they could send our material right over to China or to whoever would purchase that, because they weren't even at the facilities getting, after sorting things, weren't even getting it down to 1.5%. So anyways, we had a history, and we had educated our customers about contamination to the point where when the bans came from China, we weren't scrambling. We could just keep doing our program because we had already been doing a good job of just getting responsible. We were responsible in our recycling. In 2013, just because of pressure from DEQ to meet our 30% goal. The only way we were going to meet our 30% goal was we were doing about anywhere from 24 to 27% a year. That was Curry County wide. The only way we were going to do it is to add more material, and it takes 200 tons of material to increase your percentage by 1%. So the only way we were going to even make headway on that was to add material. So we added the lower quality plastics and mixed paper in 2013. I kind of regret that now, but we were getting pressure from our customers and from the EQ and from the state. So we did add that. We've since taken it back out now because everybody now really understands, well, because there's really, it's all going to the landfill anyways. So we recycling, which was we stopped sorting everything and just started doing glass and everything else in our curbside recycling. We still collect just cardboard from businesses, but we did go to the commingle and glass recycling. Probably we started doing that probably around 2011 or 2012. And then in 2018 and 2019, we did we rolled out our roll cart recycling. With roll cart recycling, it's very hard to control contamination. So I think our contamination, we still audited and everything, but you just can't get everything. What's nice about our trucks, they have cameras now. So if we see if the driver can't, when it tips, we can't get in contact with that customer and let them know that we will be auditing their material from then on to make sure that it's not contaminated. So processing and selling the material is collected at curbside, collected from businesses. We collect it at our transfer sites, and then we process it at CTR. We have a baler. We put the bales together. We probably do, I would say 10 loads of recycling that go to various places a month. Our cardboard goes to Springfield, commingle goes to Eugene. So we no longer have to send those up to Portland, but our metal still goes to Portland. Our e-waste goes to Portland. Tires go to Northern. Hard waste, which is just brand new. We can talk about that maybe at the end. Goes to Gold Beach, which is just now. We're just now starting to. We have a composting facility that started up, a private owner. So stay tuned for more on that. Only right now, cardboard and metal is the only material that has resale value. We get about, right now we're getting about $100 a ton on our cardboard. We pay $80 a ton for commingle. We do get metal. E-waste, we just get really compensated for processing it because it's really, that's a stewardship plan through the state of Oregon. So we just basically are collectors for them and we process it for them. So they just reimburse us for our time in processing. Tires we pay for, glass we don't get paid for, and we don't have to pay for it. So it's just a zero, it's just a wash. And then yard waste we pay for. So recycling is quite expensive actually. And the commingle material is just sorted at the MRFs and sold to end users. There's two sorts of contamination. One contamination is that you just have dirty material or material that's not recyclable in your carts. But the other contamination is at the sorting plant. They sort the material so they can sell the paper to a paper mill. They can sell glass to a glass processor and plastic to a plastic processor. But those our sorting facilities are not tooled to really be % contamination. So for a cardboard or a paper mill, they don't want metal in their material. But when you get a metal lid, like from a can, when you open up your can, you have the metal lid. If that slides into the paper, then that's contamination for the paper mill. And so paper mills, if they get too much contamination in their material, they're not going to want to buy recycled material. They're just going to want to use virgin materials. And it's been taken a long time for the recycling, the MRFs, to actually be able to clean that up for the end user to really want that material. So that's another source of contamination that you have to think about. Also, end users, you know, right now with oil so cheap, fossil fuel so cheap, and plastics is basically a fossil fuel material, it's cheaper for them to use virgin materials than to use recycled materials. So those incentives are there as well. I mean, there's no incentive for them to really want to use recycled material, and especially if the recycled material, if they have to sort through the recycled material to make the paper to make sure that there's no other contaminants in it. So here's a picture of a MRF, material recovery. It all goes there, material goes there. It gets onto these conveyor belts. They actually have robots now that can pick through this material, but this is real. I've been able to tour these plants, and they're very fascinating. There's conveyor belts all over the place. The material gets onto the conveyor belt. There's some of the conveyor belts go up, some of them go down. So your lightweight material might go, be pushed up, while your heavy material kind of goes down. So your plastic is going one place and your paper is going another place. You've got magnets that are collecting all the metal. So they're all designed so that by the end of the conveyor, by the trip through the conveyor belts, your paper is on one side, your cardboard is somewhere else, your metal is sorted, so everything kind of naturally gets sorted, and these people are just kind of going through all. So your conveyor belts are going to do all the sorting, but your people are taking out all of the plastic bags and all of the types of plastics that don't have any market for it. Anything, people put, hoses in there, and wires and cords and stuff like that. So they're grabbing all of that. Plastic bags are a real problem for the sorting facilities because they clog up the machineries and they get tied up. And so they generally, because of there's bad material in here, those materials will clog up the machinery. And so these guys, these facilities experience about 25% downtime so that they can stop and clean up the motors and the gears and stuff from the plastics. This is a very hard work. They actually count their hand strokes, and some of them do anywhere from 60 to 100 hand strokes a minute. So it's just crazy the way they work, and they're standing all day. There's dust. It's really, I think their average retention is like 8 months for this. And they work 10, 12 hours a day. So it's just really hard work. That's just another angle here. This is I toured a paper mill in Newburgh a few years ago, and they've since closed down. Paper mills are closing down all over the place, but this is where we could take all of our copy paper, shredded paper, and it would go here and get processed, and then it would come out the other end as these more recycled newsprint, and it was very fascinating. But paper mills are going away. We don't have a paper mill anymore. That's why we don't take shredded paper anymore, because you can't really send shredded paper to a sorting facilities. It has to go to it's all recycled paper here. So, and I'm getting close to the end here. I know I'm kind of going along here, but what do we do with 30 years of unsustainable practices? Overcoming 30 years of misguided collection practices and outreach programs. We've been training people and customers and the public to just recycle. And if it's plastic, just recycle it. If it's poor quality, just recycle it. We've really pushed it. and we've collected a lot of garbage. So the unintended consequences of these of our education and recovery goals is that we've had 30 to 50% contamination. China made it easy for US and all Western countries to export trash disguised as recycle. There was no penalty for it. There was no disincentives. It was all really incentives to do this. People had financial incentives, getting our goals up to the 30%, just get your goals up to 30% and, recycle whatever you can to get that. We have, one thing is, I'm going to talk a little bit more about plastic in a second, but a plastic number symbol, that just drives me crazy because you think that that is a recycling symbol, but it is not a recycling symbol. It only identifies the chemical composition. That numbering system on the plastics did not come from the recycle community. It came from the plastic the packaging companies. They wanted people to think that their plastics were recyclable. So they used the little chasing arrows, but that they just kind of borrowed that symbol and put a number in it. And the only thing that number tells you is what kind of plastic is in it so that they can know how to sort it, and not all plastic is alike. So all plastic has different compositions in it. So it just tells you what the composition is. But they used it to kind of fool the public. And I think that that's really kind of becoming, I think it's been exposed, it's becoming exposed, and people are realizing that you can't recycle all plastics. And so despite the extensive outreach in general public, the general public is really confused and misformed about the realities of the recycling market. And that's too bad because we've had 30 years that we could have really done something with, and it almost feels like a wasted 30 years. But like I said, I'm going to leave you with some hope. So what are the challenges moving forward? They say that the sorting facilities really can't they can't get the contamination down to what China is requiring. So we're going to be in this fix for a little bit. They need to be retooled and updated to meet the end user and foreign market standards. And they're thinking that it could take 10 to 15 years for that to do. It will happen. They will get retooled, and they'll become state of the art. But it's going to take a while, and it's very expensive. Sorting facilities are very expensive. So it's going to take a lot of money and a lot of innovation there. We need to re-educate the public concerning the realities of the market regarding the contamination. We kind of need to stick to our guns about what's recyclable and what's not. We really need responsible recycling programs. We need to be honest about the environmental impacts of this. Our reporting metrics should be reevaluated to incentivize responsible recycling practices. Just meeting a 30% goal, that is not, no matter what, is not the right way to do it. And our greatest generation and baby boomers, we lived through and were influenced by scarcity. I think the challenge is that our younger generations are growing up in a consumer and disposable culture, and once the baby boomers and the greatest generation have passed, there's not going to be anybody asking, should you be more frugal? Do you really need that? Should we not be so wasteful? And how is that going to impact the future when we don't have the generations that remember what it was like to have to save and be more frugal? So just a few notes about plastic. Plastic was invented. Plastic is an amazing material. I love plastic. But I guess I have a deep respect for for plastic. I know there are a lot of issues with it, but it was invented in the 19th century in response to resource shortages. They actually, the first kind of beginnings of plastic was because they were worried about the billiard ball, about the pool ball, you know, about playing pool. And the billiard ball was made of ivory at that time. And so, of course, you know, there's shortages. They were worried about shortages of resources, and they were worried about the ivory and the tortoise shell. I'm not sure that they were, you know, thinking in terms of anything. I think they were just worried about running out of material for their goods. And, you know, tortoise shells were used for combs and products. So that's where the seeds kind of started for plastics, and they were developing that. Now, most plastics are derived from crude oil and natural gas. They're polymer resins mixed with additives. I toured they were developing equipment and machinery that would take, and they actually were processing this when we were at the plant, and they took 1,000 pounds of scrap diapers from plastics from a diaper manufacturer, and took their scraps and put it into this equipment and broke down the material, and 800 pounds of pure oil came out of this plant, out of the mix there, and it looked just like your cooking oil. It was just amazing. And so most of your plastic is just made out of oil. The number system 1 through 7 is used to describe the chemical structure, not the recycling value. Currently, only number 1 and number 2 plastics have a strong market, and those are basically your water jugs, your water bottles, and your milk jugs, and those kinds of plastics. It's an amazing innovation. Plastic can be attributed to the health and prosperity of the world and saves scarce resources. It's durable, it's low cost, it's water resistant, it's lightweight, takes less energy to produce. But the problem is it's durable and inexpensive. Therefore, it encourages overconsumption and waste without regard to environmental impacts. So we have this amazing product that really is that saving other resources. We're not, you know, anymore. We're not using ivory anymore. We're not, you know, our combs are not made out of tortoise shells anymore. And we've got this product, and we've got this resource, fossil fuels, that are going to last us, they say, for at least another 1,000 years, that we could use. But it's also been, because it's so cheap and so durable, it's a very much a litter problem. It's easy to overconsume. It's easy for us not to have to think about what happens at the end of the product's lives. So plastic is kind of its own worst enemy. I've heard that the little plastic bag, grocery bag that you get holds 1,000 times its weight. So it's really a very remarkable innovation. It's just that we've got so much of it, and I think our problem is not so much the plastic. It gets demonized, but it's really our overconsumption and our litter that is really the problem. So China, I'm just going to be wrapping it up here. China did us, I think, a favor. I think, you know, they deserve to. They did the right thing by our material going in there and not handling our trash. They stopped the world in its track. Globally, nationally, regionally, and locally, municipalities and recycle operations are forced to address the crisis. Recycling does have an environmental impact. Collecting material that has weak to no markets has a negative impact on the environment. And the public deserves to know the realities of the waste and recycling and help be a part of the solution. And I think that that's where the light at the end of the tunnel is that there is going to be innovation. We are going to solve this problem. We have innovation has always, free markets have always been able to be innovative and figure out solutions. So there will be a solution, but there was never going to be a solution as long as we were able to just get rid of our litter and trash without any kind of responsibility at all to take care of our own stuff. So who's working on the solutions? We have several associations and entities in Oregon and all over the country. Every state has their association of recyclers, and so ours is the Association of Oregon Recyclers. It's called AOR. They put on trade shows every year. I've been to several of them, and they are really our voice in legislation about recycling. They are right now this link that I have here is it's a lot of legalese, but you could see from this link what they're doing in legislation right now. And basically the act that the bill that's before the legislation is a Plastic and Pollution and Recycling Modernization Act. It's the act that's going to put the responsibility back on the producers to have recyclable materials in their packaging. The producers are going to end up paying for the solutions and the coming up with solutions on packaging. We have the Oregon Refuse and Recycle Association, ORA. That's another organization. The difference between AOR and ORRA is that the Association of Recyclers is more of is strictly just recycling, and it's mostly government groups that are interested in the issues. Oregon Refuse and Recycling Association really represents the garbage haulers and the garbage haulers that are doing recycling. So there's just a little bit of difference in approaches there. We have the Department of Environmental Quality that are really huge in making sure that there are solutions, and these local municipalities and everybody that's really in the waste and recycling businesses, there are all kinds of workshops going on right now. It's really a huge global problem, and there are they've been working on this for the last maybe 5 years of coming up with solutions, and they have been coming up with solutions and are working on it. So there's a lot going on. There will be some innovation. There will be solutions coming. So the question, I guess, to end on is, does it make sense to recycle? Well, maybe at the moment, we're kind of in a pause right now, but I think what makes sense is, as long as we can do responsible recycling, it does make sense. And it makes sense to keep doing it, even though we don't have the best time when this will get worked out. And if we stop doing recycling, it's probably going to be difficult to get it back up. So I think continue to recycle. Just make sure that we're not contaminating our recycling material. Make sure. Oh, sorry. I went backwards there. I think we just need to keep on path, but just be we can be responsible for it. I wanted to give you a couple tidbits about Curry Transfer and Recycling. We have 36 employees We were established in 1972. We're part of the Waste Connections family since 1997. They purchased it from Pete Smart, who established it in 1972. So we're coming up on our 50th anniversary here. We're contracted by the cities and the county to provide municipal solid waste and recycling collection service. We have 4 county transfer sites, and we do business as Roto-Rooter as well. And it's a great team. It's really a great company to work for. And our core values are safety, integrity, customer service, great place to work, and be the best. And I think that we provide that. We really do believe in those core values. And I just thoroughly have enjoyed working at Curry Transfer and Recycling. I think it's just a great business. The parent company is Honest. We are the 3rd largest, Waste Connections is the 3rd largest waste haulers in the nation, but we are the most profitable. They have really sound, honest practices, and some of you probably know that the garbage industry has not had the best reputation in the last century. There was underground, and it was not a good situation, but the garbage industry has been legitimized over the last few years because of policies and legislation and everything. But our Waste Connections started in 1997, and it's just been a really very solid company. We, on Earth Day, it breaks my heart because on Earth Day we always have the kindergartens come to our site during this week, and we give them tours, and we teach them. I never teach them that they're going to save the world by recycling, but I do teach them about recycling, and I teach them about not littering and being responsible. And it's just really a joy to give the tours. We haven't been able to do it this year or last year because of COVID. So I'll look forward to getting started on that. But I just try to be really honest with our young people, and I don't try to scare them. I don't try to say that our world is going to be in an end in 5 or 10 years if we don't do something. But I just try to encourage them to be responsible, don't litter, and take care of the earth. Here's some resources for you. YouTube is a great resource. You have to kind of dig through it and filter through it as you do with anything, but there's a lot of information on YouTube about recycling and the stable economy. Recycling, currytransferrecycling.com. You can visit our site, and we have information about recycling and what we do there. A few books, Waste and Want. This is a really interesting book. It's a history of waste and consumerism, and she does take you through the history of how we became a consumer world. There's also a book called Just Waste, and how really billions of people don't even have good sanitation practices or curbside recycling programs like we do. We're very lucky, actually, in the United States that we have such a great sanitation system, because billions of people still don't have that available to them. And it just talks about how many people are actually in the waste business. So many third world countries basically live in dumps. So it's kind of an eye-opener. I really like this book, Plastic: A Toxic Love Story. We can't live with or without, with plastics. It's just, she started off deciding that she was going to do without plastic for as much as she could. And she realized, she said, she starts the book out by saying that as she's sitting on the toilet on a plastic seat there and then getting ready for her day, realize that everything is plastic, and you're just not going to get away from it. So she takes you on a trip as she researches how plastic came to be and what it's about and why it's such a part of us. The reason our medical technology, the reason that we have the medical technology that we have is because of plastic. If you know, you just think back when they used to, use intravenous, materials with glass, and they were not sanitary at all. And just the disposability that plastic has allowed has made our medical practices much more sanitary. And so it's probably a reason why we have longevity and we have the technology that we do today. Very, very good book. I highly recommend that one. And another a book I recommend is, or actually, this is a book that's kind of like a textbook, but Bjorn Longborg is, I really enjoy listening to him, and you can get him on YouTube. He's an environmentalist who questions our current policies. He doesn't think that the policies that our leaders and politicians are offering are going to really, they don't offer real solutions. And he believes that that climate is a problem. He believes that we have environmental issues that need to be solved, but he just doesn't believe that the way we're approaching it is going to help anything, and it could possibly hurt. And I find him very interesting to listen to. So that's my presentation. I'm open for questions. I went a little longer than I thought, so I'm sorry about that.
So Candie, you want to stop sharing your screen, and then we'll switch to a different view, see if we can get that to the gallery view. So the people that are still here. There were, without going too much, I know that people have to get on to other things, and you've talked for a long time and really appreciate it. There were a couple of things that maybe you could address, because a lot of what you talked about, people were asking, and I will offer up that I've recorded the presentation and also captured the chat, and maybe that you and I can go through and answer some of the questions offline, and then we can get it back to the people so that they can have the questions answered.
Sure.
Just a couple ones. One was, what about the sharps and batteries? How do you handle those?
Well, so the sharps we do with medical waste. So we do offer medical waste as well, and we work with Stereocycle, which is a medical waste company that has they have are regulated and have a disposal system that treats the medical waste appropriately. So they're very highly regulated by the state. So we do collect the medical waste and take care of that. And what was the second question? I'm sorry, Bill.
Batteries?
Oh, batteries. So your alkaline batteries are no longer, there's no toxic metal in those batteries anymore. So they are actually safe to put into your garbage can. They stopped putting toxic metals in batteries back in the 90s. People are still hesitant about it. So I just recommend, because there's no processor for those batteries. I recommend that if you have a jar or something, stick it in the jar, put it in your garbage can if you're worried about it, leaking anything. There's just really no toxic materials in those anymore. Your vehicle batteries, we do recycle. We have a interstate from Eureka that comes up and gets our batteries, and we can do rechargeable batteries. We take those for free at our site, and we send those to a processor back east.
Okay. Just a couple more questions. One was metals being sorted out at the transfer station and taken to Portland, plastics currently sent to the landfill because they have no value. Is that, Colleen was asking sort of clarification, is that right? Or?
So the plastics 1 and 2s, there's market for plastics 1 and 2. So as long as you just want to look at the label, and anything that's 1 and 2, you can put into your recycling bin. Everything else, yeah, is going to the landfill right now. And that's just worldwide. That's worldwide.
The last thing, and it applies to me too, says when I shred my personal papers, put them in a plastic bag, then put them in the recycle bin. Should it just go to the roll dump, or what about shredded papers?
So shredded paper we could only do shredded paper when we could take it to a paper mill, and we don't have any paper mills anymore in Oregon. At least not on the western side. I don't even think there's anything I think the closest one is in Washington. So if that material could go to a mill and be processed, then there is some value. So here's the thing about paper. Paper is fiber. So if you cut up the paper, it's like if you took up, when people used to donate their ponytails to make a wig and everything. Well, if you cut up that ponytail, it doesn't have any value anymore. And that's the same way with paper. If you cut up that paper, you're cutting up all the fiber there. And so there's really nothing to capture anymore. So it didn't have a lot of value even when it went to the mill, but now that it's going to a sorting plant and it's falling through all of their equipment, they just don't have any way of recycling that anymore. And there's not really a lot of fiber there for them to be able to capture anyways.
Okay.
So if you want to recycle your paper, don't shred it. But if you're worried about, we want to shred our paper because it's confidential, you're just going to have to make a choice there, and it would be garbage.
Yeah, I found that it actually also works mixed up with soil for raised beds, as Debbie were talking.
Right.
So.
Composting.
Yeah.
One exciting thing too, I meant to come back to this, is that the composting facility is in Gold Beach right now. There's a gentleman who's gotten DEQ approval to start that, and he is collecting material. We are sending him our yard waste right now. He's not accepting it from the public yet because he's just not set up yet to do that, but eventually he will be. So there is some good news on that front.
That's great. All right. I think what I'll need to do is, there's a whole bunch of other questions, but what, Candie, if you'd be okay, I can take them and I will distill them down, and then maybe I can work with you to get some quick answers to some of those, and I can circulate them around to everybody that joined the call.
That's fine. Or, I'm glad to stay on a little bit longer too. So whatever you want to do is fine.
Why don't I allow everybody you can unmute yourself. If you have, a couple of last minute questions without taking too long, why don't you ask if you've got some? So you'll need to unmute yourself.
Someone just barely mentioned, Debbie, I guess, said something about putting recycled paper in your garden box. Do you have to be worried about the ink contaminating the plants that are then going to grow?
As long as it's soy ink, it should be okay. But if it's not, I would be a little nervous about something that's not soy ink.
Yeah, I have no idea. No comment on that.
Candie, if I want to get rid of a metal frying pan, where do I put it?
So you can bring it to our transfer sites. We don't take that in our commingle mix because that our processor doesn't take that kind of material, but we take metal at our transfer site. So you can just bring it to our transfer sites and we'll take it.
And if it has Teflon on it?
As long as it's metal based, we'll take it. So they have ways of being able to separate other materials once it's at the plant. So if your item is mostly metal, we'll take it. We do. There is a charge at transfer sites for them, though. We don't take it for free.
Oh. Does it help you if we separate our paper from our cans, from our plastic, from our cardboard in the can?
No, not anymore, because it goes to the commingle plant and they sort it there. They just put it on a big conveyor belt. So we don't do any self-sorting anymore.
Your customers were more, I know originally when I first started recycling, like you said, we did sort everything and I didn't have a problem with that. So is that just more expensive to pick up because you actually have to have a person that gets out and puts it in your truck, even though I've already sorted it? And so you do want to stay with the commingling one, or why don't we go back to the other?
Well, it is very labor intensive, and it's like we said, we no longer have like a paper mill anymore, where we used to go to just north of Salem to take our paper there, but we don't really have another place to take our paper right now. And we do separate cardboard out, not on the residential, but in the commercial. And I think it's just labor intensive. It really is a lot more expensive to keep it separated. And then the value is not there anymore. We used to get paid for that material, but we wouldn't get paid a lot for that material at this point. So I think it's just more the recycle climate right now. But it does get sorted at the sorting plant. So we are separating it there. We're just basically allowing them to sort it instead of sorting it ourselves.
Mhm.
I had a question about batteries. What about hearing aid batteries? How do, can
Yeah.
you take those?
I think those are like lithium batteries, right?
I don't know. I get them all mixed up. I don't know.
I think that there's actually there might be some. I'll have to check into that, because I'm going to write myself a note.
Okay.
But that might be more part of the hazardous waste program, because they do take some batteries at the hazardous waste event, which we do once a year in Curry County. If there's toxic materials in it, they would go to the hazardous waste.
So you'll be able to find that out for us? And
Yeah,
maybe,
I can find that.
Okay,
yeah.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have quite a few hearing aid batteries that I've been saving and I don't know what to do with them. So that'd be great. Yeah. Thank you.
That's a really, really good question, Linda. That's the kind of stuff that we can research and get it out to people. So,
Okay.
well, as I
Excuse me, in the future, if I have a question like Linda just asked, what's the best way to get an answer? To send you an email?
You can, call me, email me. I'm basically the recycling coordinator for Curry County.
Okay,
And if I don't have the answer myself, I'll find out for you.
okay.
Yeah, and you can reach me. My email address is Candie, CANDIEW @wasteconnections.com. Email me, just give me a call, reach out to me.
As you can tell, you're an incredible resource and also very, very helpful in providing this information. I think the last question is to Vicky. You raised your hand, and
Yeah.
I'll let everybody go. So
I'm telling you, I have this I can't remember anything. And I just forgot the question I was gonna ask. I'm sorry.
I know that feeling.
It's a memory thing.
The other thing too, Bill, that we talked about is if anybody is interested in touring our yard, it's a very simple operation, but it's kind of eye-opening. You can actually come in. I'll be glad to give you a 10, 15, 20-minute tour and show you kind of how it all works. So.
Yeah. I just want to thank you for, everything that CTR does, because we've lived here about 11 years now, I guess. But ever since we moved here, it seems like every time we have a question, we call you guys and get a good answer. And, it's really helpful. It's like, I feel like when I call CTR, that somebody there cares. So,
Thank you. I
I do
appreciate
appreciate
that.
it's
One thing
really-
that, we're, Waste Connections is a, all over the nation, but they really allow us to be able to have, we're able to be local, and they give us a lot of freedom to just be able to be like a family-owned business almost. So we get to operate like that. So it's
Yeah,
it's a very good company.
I was pretty surprised the first time when, I guess before we moved here, I don't remember, but I just calling and I thought, well, gee, it sounds like they really care. And I was surprised, but I thought that's just the garbage company. But it was somebody who actually, wanted to answer our question. At the
Oh.
time, they said, well, you're going to need a yellow bin for the glass. It was like,
Right.
oh, okay.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
All right. Well, I thank you very much, Candie. This has been very informative. I've enjoyed working with you to put it together, and I would very strongly recommend having a chance to go look at the facility and what you've got. This has been wonderful for me. I want to thank all the participants. I know some people have had to drop off, but it's been excellent. So
Okay.
with that, I
Very
want to
informative.
very much so.
yeah. Thank
All
you.
right. Everybody have a good evening.